Well, a very good start to the session. Thank you very much. Okay, so well done, thank you. Swiftly on then. No pressure. We have Ann Guadagno, who's going to be talking to us about stakeholder perceptions of peer review at the National Institutes of Health Centre for Scientific Review.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, and you're going to present there, because this thing is really tall. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your kind invitation to present results of our research on stakeholder perceptions of peer review at the National Institutes of Health Center for Scientific Review. I want to make a special thank you to Richard Nakamura, my co-author, who is so wonderfully here today and will be sharing additional research about our experimental evaluations immediately after me. Before I begin, I would just like to set the context for this research. NIH is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We're the largest medical research institute in the United States, and we fund a great many different types of grants and contracts. CSR, the Center for Scientific Review, serves as a service center for grant review at the NIH to about 24 different institutes and centers that have funding authority at NIH. At CSR, we review about 75% of all grant applications that come into the NIH. We receive around 81,000 grant applications a year, and we manage the review process with only about 250 scientific review officers who are really wonderful in terms of managing these grant reviews. We typically recruit about 17,000 reviewers from the faculty across the country and sometimes across the world to participate in the grant review process each year. So as you can see, the scientific community plays an incredibly critical role in the peer review process, and we are greatly valued. We value their work and are appreciative of their many contributions to us at CSR and the NIH. The current CSR studies are committed to better understand the quality of the NIH peer review process. So just a few years ago, we embarked on a journey to gain a more comprehensive and systematic view of what our stakeholders perceive we do, and also how well they perceive the quality of what we do, the quality of peer review. Our goal for these assessments is to obtain actionable feedback, and that means we only ask questions if we can do something about the answers we get. The two major questions that were guiding this evaluation process were, first, to what extent are current CSR practices for peer review optimal for achieving our mission? And our mission is to ensure that all applications receive a fair, independent, expert, and timely review, free from inappropriate influence, and so that we can fund the best applications going forward. The second thing that we felt was important in terms of questions to answer were, what are the areas of success and improvement in the quality of peer review? So the first phase of this evaluation effort was conducting quick feedback surveys with two of our grant stakeholder groups, the NIH program officers and also the reviewers who come in to review the applications. We wanted a survey instrument that would be short. It would only take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. We wanted to minimize burden. We realize that many people are inundated with surveys these days. We consider them tools for helping us learn about service delivery from the stakeholders' perspective. We really wanted to reach out and find out what our stakeholders think of us. There had been several kind of piecemeal studies conducted over the years with a group of stakeholder, but there was nothing consistently done across a certain time and with all of the various groups that we work with. Our assumption for this quick feedback surveys was that reviewers and program staff are in a strong position to provide quality feedback about our peer review process. So the scope of this comprehensive and systematic effort was to really conduct quick feedback surveys, focus groups, and personal interviews with 5 different stakeholder groups. The quick feedback surveys were conducted with reviewers and program officers. We sent surveys via email with a personalized link to the survey. With the reviewers, we sent them out during the study section meetings. With the program officers, we sent them out after the review cycle. We did this in 2 years, really, 2015 and 2016. There was somewhat of an overlap in the time frame for the grant cycle, and that's why you see 2015, 16, 16, 17 in terms of the reviewers. We've reached out to over 10,000 reviewers each time in all of our 500 or so CSR study sections in one grant cycle. We thought we had an excellent response rate with 47% of our respondents responding to the survey. With the program officers, we sent them surveys at the end of the grant review cycle so that they could give us just one response, one survey, in terms of all of the study sections that they may have observed. And every program officer had responsibility for at least one CSR application before we would permit them to be a part of the survey. The response rate was 37% and 38%, which actually for us is quite good. We also conducted focus groups during this same time frame. We completed 27 focus groups with 4 different constituents: applicants, reviewers, scientific review officers across NIH, both at CSR and in our institutes, and also with program officers. And we conducted personal interviews, executive interviews, with half of all of the NIH directors. We looked at directors who had responsibility for smaller budgets, moderate budgets, and then some with very high grant review budgets. Here's a sample of the agreement statements that we used in the quick feedback survey. And I don't want to go through them individually, but you can read it. I just want to say that we used 7-point Likert-type scales to measure where reviewers and program officers agreed on 4 critical elements of peer review. On the scoring, the prioritization of applications according to scientific merit, on the roster of reviewers, whether or not the people that we assembled to review these grants were appropriate, on the assignments of the applications to the reviewers, did they make sense? Did they have the right expertise, broad expertise? And then also on the quality of discussion during the application review meetings. We used an open text box at the end. This is a very short survey. The program officer survey was a bit longer, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we asked them to tell us anything else that they felt was important for us to know, and we did get thousands of comments. We also gave the director's email address at the end of the survey and said if you have a personal question you would like to have answered, our director will answer it personally. All of the surveys were anonymous, they were confidential, and we reported back the results of these surveys to senior management within 1 week of the scientific meeting, so they knew instantly what reviewers thought of the meetings. And every year, we send the scientific review officers a summary of how they did compared to CSR overall, and we ask them to share that with their reviewers so that everybody is in the feedback cycle. It's important to note that when we do these feedback surveys, we stress with senior management and with SROs that this should not be a part of their evaluation at the end of the year in terms of their progress reports on how they're performing, but that they should be used as constructive indicators to help make what we do even better. Let me, whoops. Oh, 1 minute. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let me try to be quick.
Really
All right. Very quickly. This is favorable responses. The first 2 bars are from our reviewers. The next 2 bars are from our program officers. Very quickly, you can see that our reviewers were much happier with what we do than our program officers, and these were the 4 dimensions of what we looked at. These are looking at alternative study section meeting formats, regular face-to-face meetings, teleconference, video-assisted, and internet-assisted on each of those 4 dimensions: scoring, rosters, assignments and quality of discussion. And you can see that face-to-face meetings are by far the gold standard. Internet-assisted meetings are new. They're not quite as well accepted yet, but we're working on it. And video-assisted and teleconferences are quite favorable. We track the trends over time. This is a look at how reviewers rated us. The dark green and the lighter green are very favorable, a 1 or a 2 on a 7-point scale. Program officers, we asked about some of the issues they were concerned with in 2 years. Orange is 2015, green is 2016. You can see that there was some improvement in their ability to hear our meetings. Most of them dial in, so there have been some technical challenges. They tell us about the quality of listening. There's also real-time status is kind of a triggering device that tells the program officer when an application is coming up for review, a scheduling situation. You can see that got a little worse, but we are working on it. Travel to meetings. We now conduct study section meetings across the country, not always in Bethesda, but program officers, some are not happy with that. And internet connectivity is an issue that we have to kind of deal with. Focus groups results, I just want to consolidate into two, a positive and a negative kind of a challenges statement. But in terms of the positive, we got thousands of responses. We use computational linguistics to get at some of the trends that are coming through in real time. And we would have to say that the current system is fair, rigorous, and like democracy, flawed, but the best available. Some of the challenges we saw have been issues of bias against certain types of research. Some feel that we don't have enough recourse for reviews that are considered inaccurate. But these two things are very important for us to know, because we actually do have recourse for reviews. So we need to be better at reaching out and educating. And I think I have to stop right now. Thank you very much.
I know you have one more slide, so let's look.
You want to look at the
can
ones?
see how many slides you've got, yeah.
So what are we trying to do to respond to these? As I said, we only ask questions if we can get actionable results. Richard is going to talk about some of our alternative scoring methods that we've been introducing. We have a massive study going on right now determining whether bias exists in peer review. We also have looked at scoring distributions across study sections, and where they seem to be outliers, we're thinking in terms of realigning so that the study sections are more in sync with the applications. And we're working on some technical issues that I won't mention for our program officers to help them listen better. But one of the major complaints we get is the issue of pursuing the homeostasis of glucose and caffeine. And by that I mean about 5 years ago we were told we could no longer serve refreshments or coffee at study section meetings. And Richard continues to push and help us in that effort.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
It's a
you
lot
very
to
much.
cover. Thank you very much.
Hi, Steve Gallo from the American Institute of Biological Sciences. And I just had a question related to, do you have any data, similar data of applicant perceptions of peer review, particularly with regard to expertise? And do you have anything, or would you plan on doing anything in a paired way, so you could look at the applicants paired to the same peer review panel to see if the perceptions are the same or different, or how different they are?
Thank you, Steve. That's a great question. The data that we have from applicants is anecdotal data in focus groups, and there were quite a few focus groups conducted with the applicants. We did it in 4 different geographical areas because we have our chartered slates. We invite reviewers in based on geography. So we do have those data available, and I can share some of that with you if you would like after the meeting. In terms of looking at applicants, we ask similar questions in these focus groups. We really spent a lot of time working on the Moderator's Guide so that we could get somewhat of the same perspective from the different stakeholder groups. So we do have extensive data from focus groups, from applicants, from reviewers, but not in the same meetings. And also from our program officers and scientific review officers, but I like that idea very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Facebook, but first I'll take the question up here. Thanks.
Actually, mine is a bit of a follow-up to the last question. And, you mentioned the idea of stakeholders, and certainly the applicants are a major stakeholder in this process. And whether or not you could implement some sort of a standardized electronic evaluations tool post-review once the applicants have received their reviews. I think that would be very interesting to the scientific community.
That would be very interesting. We haven't discussed that, but we'll certainly take it into consideration, and it could be done. One thing I would just like to mention that you may already know, we do have constraints with the budget right now at NIH. So about anywhere from, I would say, 70% to 90% of our applicants are going to be unhappy customers, in that a lot of excellent grants just can't be funded because of the budget situation right now. But I still think that's a valuable suggestion, and I think it would certainly be interesting to talk with applicants after the review.
The focus group suggests that about 80% of the variance in the responses will relate to the score that the individual received.
Right. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the budget, so it's a good time to ask the question from Salman Tahir in Lahore, Pakistan. And the question is, at what percentage are you funding?
It depends on the institute that has the programmatic responsibility for funding, and some of the institutes can share funding. But Richard, would you say it's, Richard is our
The number NIH
authority.
is using is the success rate overall is 18% right now. But the institute rate goes from success rates of 30% to a little less than 10%. Okay. Depending on the institute.
So everybody has to move to Switzerland.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And a question here.
I wanted to refocus the first question back on the reviewers, because at least anecdotally, that seems to be a major concern they have about being assigned applications that are really outside their expertise. And I wonder if there were differences in perception among the SROs and the reviewers, or whether even that question was addressed in your survey, and what sort of responses you got.
It was addressed to the reviewers, and we did ask them if they felt that the assignments were appropriate to their area of expertise. And over 80% said yes. But we have heard anecdotal comments, certainly, and comments through the focus groups to address the issue that you're talking about. And I would have to say that most of our SROs will go through great lengths to try to change an assignment. If a reviewer gets an assignment, says this just isn't right, they call the SRO will try to make an immediate assignment switch. So, yeah, I mean, there's some of that definitely going on, but we do make every possible attempt to make sure that the applications are appropriately assigned to the reviewers. And we were pleasantly surprised. I mean, when we asked the question to reviewers, this is over 4,000 responses. They said that over 80% of the time, the assignments are good.
I too am a bit surprised just based on my own perspective. So I wonder whether there are areas that do very well and areas that don't, and some of them, there's often difficulty finding appropriate reviewers.
Yes.
And ones that are not conflicted. And,
right.
And so maybe a deeper dive might help you focus that.
Right.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And we also, from the comments that we get from the reviewers in the study sections, we can't go study section by study section, but we do look at it from an institute perspective, and if there appears to be issues like the one you raised, Richard will go and personally speak with the institute director and try to work things out. What kind of expertise do you need? And do we have it? And do you have suggestions for who might be good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have one quick question, which is, you had very large numbers of respondents in your surveys, but you had a potential for quite a large non-response bias because the response rates were quite low. So I just wondered if you'd thought about doing a stratified random sample of reviewers in each of your areas rather than trying to get everyone.
Right. Now, we could do a stratified random sample, and I think that's a really good idea, and we've discussed that. But the issue is if we really want to get at the study section level, there are about 500 study sections in one grant cycle that get reviewed. In order to give the scientific review officer accurate feedback, we really need to reach out to the community. Otherwise, our ends could be very small for the study section. But it's a great idea, I agree.
Oh, well. Thanks. I think that's it for questions. So thanks very much, and we're still on time. So great. Thank you. Yeah.